Hey, welcome back. This is part 5 of us building the Pulumi Schema Explorer. Last time we worked on getting the third-party plugins to install and how we did that and made sure it installs it from the server and redirects and everything. Let me show you how that looks like. So what we did is that if we're talking about a third-party Pulumi plugin, I'm always looking at this one for some reason, and this is an example. It loads it and then we can see the schema here. So I've done some work in the meantime to try to make so that's out of the way. I'm trying to make the Explorer a bit more useful and live up to its name a little bit. So because we have here some kind of resources, I'm also showing their description down here. And the way I do this is that I just take the description of the resource and render it out as Markdown, which is how it should be, except there are some nuances here. So let me show you. If I'm looking at the not GitHub releases, need to find where I'll put that. Not the GitHub releases, not the schema functions, but instead I'm looking at the schema resources. And under here, when I've selected a resource, if the selected resource is, well, not yet selected, we don't show anything. But if we do have a selected resource, I take the description, which is a very long string containing way too many things, such as the documentation of the resource, but also examples on a per language basis. So I've implemented a feature here which parses it out and gives me a more structured format of the documentation for the resource. Because if I don't do this, I simply take this code and render out the resource description as is, it will look like this. This is how it looks like. What it does is that we have the description here until we reach the examples thing here, which is like a marker to say that, okay, this is the start of examples. Then we have example usage, and then we have example, in this case only a single one, and it renders out code per supported language. So here an example in TypeScript, this is in Python, this is in C#, this is in Go, Java, and YAML. And there's also a bit of talk about import, but this is of course not very useful when looking at it like this. So what I did, I implemented a mini parser which takes this and puts the documentation as its own thing, and then puts example as its own thing per language. So let's look at that for a bit. So we have docs, and docs will have a description and examples. Let's look at the types actually. So examples, parse documentation gives me documentation, which has the main description, and examples, which is a list of example that has this description per language and the code of that language. Now the parser isn't something mind-blowing. It's just literally playing with the indices of these markers. So for example, when we find examples, no pun intended, we like start to read from the index of this till the index of that, and we keep adding examples from the rest of the substring. So it's not very sophisticated. It's pretty simple actually. But with that, we use it to parse the supported languages here, and is doing like some redundant work because it's parsing examples multiple times to search for the specific languages, but that's okay. That's fine. We can work with that. So if I go back to index, I don't know why it's broken. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Anyways, I will go back to this in a moment. So what I've also done with Markdown is that I've implemented custom rendering for components, and when I encounter a code component, let's just not mind the fact that it's red here. It's a bit annoying, to be honest. Is it possible that it's using like a weird version of this? Because I have Markdown v4, which should work fine. Anyways, yeah, it's something with Markdown. I'll look into it in a bit. But basically, when we have a code component, if it's inline, then I keep it as code. Nope. Go back. Almost. Not what I wanted. Yes. Okay, go back. So if it's inline, make a code element. Otherwise, make it into a highlighted component using the class name. So I'm using here a highlight imported component, and let me just take a moment to turn this a bit down because I can't hear myself. Okay, so here we import the highlight React component as easily as you can because it's using the React component attribute with an import from this library which I installed into this project, right? So this gets me syntax highlighting. This is really annoying that it's broken. Let me see, cd crc client. Let me actually upgrade this to 4. Now I'll actually upgrade Felice as well to v4 because with Felice v2.4 we have also npm proper npm package definitions. So let me .NET restore, just to be sure, restore without any cache. .NET build. Yes, it's building just fine. So what's the problem here? Well, yep. Okay, now it works. No red squigglies. That's nice. So let me remove my axe from here and use the new code, which is in Markdown v2.4. So here I have Markdown components 3, and 3 does not need anything like that. The reason I am overriding how it renders pre because it somehow is generating two nested pre elements, so I'm just like removing one of them. I wish I could remove the other one, but I couldn't, so I'm just like simplifying it a bit. As for the code, also removing my hacks from here so that if props is inline, which should work, then we just use the normal children. Then if it's inline, then we use normal code. Otherwise we use the highlight component and we give it the class name and the children, props children. All right, this looks good. Yeah, this looks good. Just let me run .NET Femto as well to make sure I have the proper dependencies. npm, that's correct. Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. It's also resolving that Feliz now is using these types because of these transitive dependencies. It's not Feliz that uses the dependencies, it's those transitive dependencies of Feliz, which is great. Yeah, select search needing specific dependencies, React Markdown needing specific dependencies. I don't need this anymore, I think. So fingers crossed that this still works. I think I'll go later and add this into its own package, just because even though it's so simple, it's still nice to have its own package with its proper npm package dependency here. Regardless of that, let's go back and actually run it. .NET run. And again, in this video, I'm a bit diverted a little bit, but I want to actually make the Explorer useful. So that means rendering some stuff about the resources and hopefully also their examples. Okay, let's refresh that. Resource, yeah, that's nice. Wait, for this one it's only this, and this one is only that, but here it has... Okay, it is possible that in this case we didn't... Well, for this case, where is it? In this case, we didn't properly parse. That is a bit unfortunate, a bit annoying, but I'll get to that later. I did say that the parsing wasn't that sophisticated, so yeah. Or maybe I didn't bring it back. Docs description, no, it is good. It is good. Let me just see how it looks like. Actually, just description. So we're looking at, which one was it? A database? Let's look at the code. I like to browser console actually done. Console log description. Database, right? Inspect. Console. Okay. Yeah, this thing doesn't have like a proper yeah, it definitely doesn't have a proper example separator, which is why it's not being parsed correctly. And now I don't want to go ahead and make hacks to make sure this example works. That's fine. It's up to the authors of these packages to make sure that they are working correctly. Now, this is how it should look like with the proper example separator. So it's, for the time being, not my problem. And I will get to something more interesting, which is to add more information about the resources. So let me look at AWS, which usually has better examples. So analyzer, okay, that's the description. And I am inclined to make tab for the resource and its examples. Let me do that. resource info takes a resource of type resource. This is a React component, and it renders out some things. Okay, this is suggesting that I use a table. I will use that in a bit, but let's see. Resource info using this resource. So this one is good. All right, should look exactly the same. Yeah, looks good. So here we're going to handle all the view business. So here I want to actually make some tabs. So let's go with selected tab, and set selected tab is view state. Let's call it main. Should I call it main or description? Let's call it about or docs. Yeah, docs sounds good. So we have docs and we have examples. Let's see. So HTML. Also added a couple of helper functions like div. So I could use block like this. Use a UL. Thank you. I don't want schema, I want examples. And this one will be examples. All right, so far so good. Don't need this. So after we render the tabs, we check match selected tab with, is it the docs? Then we do that. Is it the examples? Then we do something else. And for examples, let's actually make a drop down of all the possible examples. Well, first, let's go like, let's render them out all one by one. So HTML div for example in, well, maybe I need to do that once here. That docs.examples. For each example, we render a subtitle example dot description and Markdown content will be the code. Let's go example. Let's also add the language to the code. So example in example language and content dot code, something like that. Well, the description should probably also include language. Let's see how this looks like. Resource, so default arc, close, description, empty. For anything else, unknown tab. Basically, right? So we have docs and we have examples and we have some kind of tabs we're working with. Okay. Which will give us some space to do, well, that's not exactly what I wanted. Okay, those are the examples. Hey, that's nice. That is very nice. Yeah, let's do the examples properly. I wonder why they're like that. I think it's because of the block. Let me remove the block. Yeah, React fragment instead. Yeah, this is definitely off. Did I add a weird thing here? No. How is this any different than the other tab from Schema Explorer? My functions, general info, release notes, tabs. Oh, it's a div with tabs, then the UL. Oh, didn't get it right. So that's a div with tabs. That. Those go here, and we need to get rid of the children. Sounds bad when I say it like that. Okay, that looks more like it, I think. I could probably make an abstraction for tabs here. But I will not. Yep, that is way nicer. That is really nice. Yeah, I know the examples look ugly, but regardless. Okay, let's make it drop down or make the examples nicer before we do, because using the code here, so that's probably like this example language slash new line, then example code, then this like that. Because when I parse them, I take these things out. Okay. That's better. That's way better. Now let's put these examples in a nice drop down. Probably make a new component out of this. Examples takes some docs, which is documentation. Yeah, component. It's from the examples module dot document. Okay. And it's basically this. Make it a bit nicer. Render it here using the docs. Resource info, documentation. Oh, examples. Drop down, because it has the same name. Sometimes it conflicts with the module name. So examples drop down from the docs, just like this. Go to examples drop down. Let selected example docs examples let's become a select search. Select search. So we need a drop down, and once you select something, it should show something underneath. So match selected example with none, then you don't render anything. Some example reference, then I have to find it. Example markdown. An example reference is you find it. Example reference is simply language plus description. It's something internal, so it doesn't matter that much. Select search ID examples. Placeholder, select an example. It's searchable. Yes. On change. Is correct. And finally options. That is exactly what I wanted. The name is going to be description and language. Yeah, GitHub Copilot is really good. All right, so this is rendering the examples. Analyzer, docs, examples. All right. So if you want like Java examples, you will see account analyzer and organization analyzer Java. Still, the hashtags are a bit weird. Let's actually call that Java and do some maybe I can actually do some nice rendering selected. Select search, render value, takes props, and what does it give me? Props, attributes, search, values. Render value goes to React element. Okay. Okay, this is a shot in the dark, but I think the render values will take, it's a list because select search might have been a multiple search kind of thing, like multiple selections, but if it's a single search, then it's a single value, so that's why I'm using this. Okay, do that. Examples, and it doesn't work. Okay, never mind then. So what I'm going to do is replace this with this. Okay, let me do this. Let inline clean example takes, do it anywhere, right? Just like that. Select an example. So that looks much nicer. You write TypeScript, you will get these two. Okay. Still something weird about using pre here. C# looks okay. This is almost good enough. Almost. We have the select search, and I will do an HTML break. I really need to fix why use deferred re-triggers the whole page when I change something small. Examples, selected, yep, that's nice. The CSS is a bit messed up here, but I think that is so far so good. Let's look at another thing in like an app. Well, it broke. That's a good thing. Index not found. From oh, because when I changed the resource, options changed. Okay, let's make that somewhat safer. So try find match with none. Don't need this, don't need that. It's simply ABR. And what I want to do is actually let inline reset selection. That is correct. And then React use effect reset selection when the docs change. Analyzer examples. I think I'm adding a new line too much. This. Examples. Yeah, that's nice. Just need to fix the CSS later for this. Okay, let's go to another thing. Yep. App, where was it? Was app. Okay. So even description is not enough. I think description has to be title and other code. Okay, but again, I can fix that later. It's fine. And back to the docs. Let's add some more things about the resources. I don't know about the UI here. It's getting a bit much, I feel like. Like there's too much going on. But regardless, let's add more things to the docs, which is about the resource inputs and outputs. I'm not sure if I should do that in a separate tab. Let's do that in a separate tab. So let's go back here. Let's call that inputs, render properties, resource input properties. The properties doesn't exist because I need to write it. Properties, which are usually a map from a string to property. Which is correct. The reason I'm using a function or a React component for this is because I want to reuse this for a bunch of things. Not just resources, but also functions, function definitions. All right, so render properties will be, I think, just a table, to be honest. I've also added a new, or a couple of these helper functions. I don't know if I talked about those before, but they're just like simple wrappers. Okay, so it's a table, and then for property values, call it name and description. We have name and property in map to list, which means that dd can be this thing, and this one is going to be a default arg, like that. So that's the resource inputs. Oh, I didn't add it to the tabs. That brings another one here, which is inputs, then is active, select inputs, input property. All right, resources, analyzer, input properties, analyzer name. Okay, there's something weird going on with it, with the TDs. Ah, yeah, I know, because I'm making too many of them. That should just be HTML text with the name, and same here, HTML text. Yeah, that's more like it. The name and the description. All right, that looks good. That's input properties. Let's make this a bit more sophisticated. That's how we make it sophisticated. Input properties. Not sure if I should call it input arguments, but they are definitely input properties. Render properties. So the input properties, okay? We also have outputs, I believe. Oh, just properties, input properties. They're called inputs and outputs, let's call it that. The inputs make another one for outputs, render properties using just properties, which are the output properties of the resource. Okay, make another tab for that. Outputs, outputs. Right. I think I need something. Yep. So resources, analyzer, inputs, outputs, because inputs are not the same as outputs, and a bunch of examples. All right. Making them a bit more useful, even though I'm not really sure about the layout of things in here. Something that is nice to add is the type of the field of the property. So we have strong. I think I want to put that in a div, and here under it will be text type, schema type, render type. Render type doesn't exist yet because I have yet to write it. It's a React component taking on a schema type. And I'm gonna do just a couple of them. So schema type, it's a string, it's a string. A number, it's a number. Boolean. Not an object, but integer. Integer. What else we have? Yeah, we have a bunch of things. Let's do array. So if we have array, then we say it's an array of element type, so element rendered element type, render this thing that or anything else, do a string just as a starting point of what this does. I think I could also do references, so schema type references. Yeah, ref is just a string. So it's a reference to the type. Yeah, that looks good enough for now. Oh, I didn't use it? Or did it just return empty for all of these? One way to find out. Yep, it did. Now why is that? Let's find out. The warning. Could be because we have schema type. I think output. I'm just reducing the output for now. Have a look. Again, it's empty. Which makes me want to browser DOM console log. A good look at these inputs. It's a map, and the tree is analyzer property. Oh, schema type, it's an array of something. Oh, it's not an array of something. It's tag 0, so that must be string. So why didn't this work? Is it because it's a React component, maybe? Let's render RenderType. Yeah, that looks actually good. It looks good. So why was it weird? Oh, it's because... Okay. Okay, now I... Because it's rendering a string. And I added something in there. Let's... Yeah, the type must be React element, which means HTML text. Or it doesn't. I think that should be fine. Just a helper function. Can't make my recursive function private. I can. Okay. String tags is the value map, which we didn't account for yet. Okay. So string HTML break the text. Empty, I don't like. Let's see. Schema type map of element type. It's a string to that render type. What else? That is not bad at all. Outputs, inputs. And just give it rows like this. If I give it rows, will it remove the warning? Nope. Okay. Or let's not change the table body. No, this was good. I think the problem is here. That's somewhat nicer. An indexed list. An eye here. We have drop key. This one. And up children is this cell. Okay. Nice. No more warnings. Rid of my silly browser console log. And I think this is starting to look really nice. Yeah, refs are a bit weird here, but that's okay. I have to figure something out with refs or refs a bit later, but that's okay. What else? Method. Yeah, I think the description needs to be in Markdown actually. So, Markdown content. Yeah, that looks nicer. It looks way nicer. Examples. Yeah, this needs some fine tuning, but that's okay. HTTP method for API gateway resource. What's an API gateway? Gateway. All right. Okay, so that was nice. That was for resources. Still needs some fine tuning. This needs to be expanded out. This is for resource info. I think I can do one real quick for functions. So if I do this, call it function info. And this is going to be a function, docs, inputs, outputs, examples. Description. Has inputs. Match function inputs with none, then some inputs. Inputs properties. There we go. Markdown content, inputs, description. We render out the markdown content. I think the same for outputs. Except outputs is something different. Yeah, it's called return type here, which is a schema type. Okay, we do have a function for that. That's called HTML text RenderType return type. Examples. Okay. Schema functions. Here. Resources, they still work. Functions, docs, inputs. It's empty. I think because the output is an object, so that doesn't get rendered correctly. And examples work too. All right. That was a lot, but that was also really good. That makes the Explorer way more useful. Okay. Still needs a bit more fine-tuning when it comes to rendering examples and figuring out the title versus more description that should be rendered out here. But I think I will do that in a later time. As for inputs, still works. The types are not yet complete. I think I still need to expand those with whether they're required, whether they were secret or not, requiredness, secretness, and also the plainness of the type. Need to do it here. Making sure this still works. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Authorizer, inputs, outputs. Also need to figure out how I can make the width here fixed, because it changes when I have a lot of markdown going on here. Anyways, I think I'll call it a day for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next time where we're gonna expand more upon this. But I think I want to already start working on the differ feature. So what I want to add is have another tab here called versions, which shows all versions other than the current selected one, and you will have an option to diff it, so get the differences between the two schemas. But yeah, enough for today. Do that next time. See you around. Have a good one.